Hey everyone. At different times, I've made a bunch of small, uninterruptible power supplies for various purposes, and I even once copied one of the popular Chinese modules. Smaller UPS units, for example, for routers or security cameras, are in pretty high demand, and the modern Chinese market offers some pretty decent solutions. Many of them work, but a good quality UPS is never cheap. All the cheap options have their drawbacks. Some have a low battery charging current, others have low output power, some use poor quality batteries, and others have low efficiency. Those same Chinese manufacturers sell all sorts of modules for quite reasonable prices, which you can use to build a pretty decent uninterruptible power supply for a router and other low-power devices. And today, I'm going to show you my version of such a UPS based on Chinese modules, which will have high efficiency, powerful charging, impressive output power, and long battery life. Of course, you can build something similar or even from scratch, but for many people, that's just not an option. But buying ready-made modules, soldering them together, and ending up with a finished product is something many people can do. That's why I chose this particular approach. I put the circuit together in just half an hour. I tried to make it as simple as possible to replicate, without any hard-to-find components. The uninterruptible power supply is planned to have a power output of around 40 to 50 watts, which is several times more than those tiny Chinese UPS modules with synchronous high-efficiency converters and equally efficient charging systems. It will have all the necessary protections, and the power from the integrated power supply will be enough to simultaneously power a 40-watt load and charge the batteries with a fairly high current. Also, the switching between operating modes, whether from the mains or from the converter, will be fast enough. In other words, the load will barely even notice it. All in all, this is a pretty serious power source. Let's start with the main components of these UPS units. First of all, of course, we need a battery. We're going to use a regular lithium-ion battery. At first, I wanted to use lithium iron phosphate cells since they're the safest, but at the time I made this video, I didn't have the right BMS board on hand. So we'll go with the classic option that's widely used in factory-made UPS units of this type. In my case, I chose power cells from DMA, standard 21700. Each cell has a capacity of 5 amp hours, and I'm using 4 of them. The battery will be configured as 2S, 2P. That gives us an effective capacity of 10 amp hours at a voltage of 7.4 volts. That's 74 watt hours of energy. Trust me, that's a lot. With this kind of backup battery, even factoring in all the conversion losses, a standard router will run for 6 to 8 hours, depending on the router. The next thing to consider is the power supply. That will both power the router and charge the batteries. At first, I wanted to use a powerful smartphone charger, something around 60 to 100 watts, add a Type-C trigger set to 20 volts to the UPS input, and then just go with the classic setup. But I decided to make the power supply integrated. This makes the UPS a bit less universal, but I wanted to end up with a complete unit without any external gadgets. You just plug it into the outlet, connect the load, and that's it. I'm planning to use this pretty decent switching power supply. It's originally set for 9 volts, but the output voltage here is determined by a TL431 reference, and by replacing just one resistor in its circuit, we can get a little over 12 volts at the output, giving us a bit of headroom. This power supply has been tested, and it turned out that it can easily deliver 50 to 60 watts continuously. Of course, it does heat up, but it has pretty good heat sinks for both the power switch and the output rectifier. So considering the maximum calculated load power is around 40 watts, we still have a reserve of 15 to 20 watts of power. Why is this so important? The thing is, when the UPS battery is fully charged, the power supply feeds the load directly and can deliver almost all of its usable power to it. But there could be a situation where the battery is completely drained and the load is powered at the same time. In that case, the power supply has to both charge the battery and power the load simultaneously. That's why you need some power reserve, enough to charge the battery. Of course, you could buy, for example, a regular 12-volt LED driver with a current of 6, 7, or more amps, but I'm working with what I have on hand. And if you decide to repeat this, you can choose for yourself what power supply to use. Battery charging system. A power supply is, of course, good, but by itself, it can't charge batteries. The power from it goes to a special charging module, which provides the correct charging method for our battery. You can't mess around with lithium, so everything needs to be done properly here. Our battery is 7.4 volts. The charge termination voltage for this pack is 8.4 volts. The charging module shouldn't overcharge the pack and must also provide a normal, stable charging current. In short, the battery should be charged using the constant current, constant voltage method. The LX Life 2N is a reliable charging module that functions as both a step-up and step-down converter and can charge lithium batteries up to 4 cells, 4S. The input voltage range is from 4.5 to 15 volts. The maximum power is 18 watts. So this module can theoretically charge our 2S battery pack at a maximum current of just over 2 amps. It's important to note that the board has a Type-C input connector and an automatic power delivery trigger, so it can charge our pack even from a 5-volt source. It provides very precise charge termination voltage and all the necessary protections. Some people might think that a 2-amp charging current is too low and that it would take more than 5 hours to fully charge the battery if it's completely drained. That's a problem if the power goes out often. In my case, that's not really an issue since outages are rare, but in any case, there's always the option to use other charging modules with a higher current, or step-down CVC converters set to the required current. But keep in mind the point I mentioned earlier. If you need to power high-demand loads and charge the batteries with a high current at the same time, you'll need a powerful power supply. Otherwise, it will simply go into overload protection. You can't just hook the battery up directly to our charging system because lithium batteries are sensitive to deep discharge, overcharging, and short circuits. That's why BMS boards are always used with these kinds of batteries. They provide protection against all the issues I mentioned earlier, and some boards even offer thermal protection. My BMS board is specifically designed for 2S assemblies and is rated for a current at 20 amps. That's a lot for a system like this. You can desolder a couple of MOSFETs to lower the current. The BMS chip monitors the voltage drop across the channels of these switches to provide short circuit protection. But for now, I'll leave it as is. We can always desolder them later if needed. During charging and discharging, the parallels will eventually become unbalanced, but that won't happen anytime soon. That's especially true if you're using new cells with identical characteristics, which is exactly our case. Balancing systems are designed to equalize the voltage across the cells, and they can be either passive or active. An active balancer is obviously better. It works continuously and balances the voltage very precisely. But in this system, there's really no need for an active balancer. In our case, the balancer is a nice bonus, but you can do without it. I'm going to use a protection board that already has a built-in passive balancer. The balancing current of this system is very low, but it's better than nothing. A passive balancer works after charging is complete and dissipates all the excess energy through resistors. They will heat up during the balancing process. We have a power source, charging, and protection. The last component left is the converter. This module, like all the others, has been thoroughly tested, so the choice is based on personal experience. What's special about this converter, and why did I choose it? First, it's synchronous, has high efficiency, features external switches, and has very fast short-circuit protection. It also has overheat protection. The board is called the CR3050B. Unfortunately, the market on the chip itself is worn off. The module costs about $3. The input voltage can range from 3 or 4 up to 32 volts, and the output can be 5, 9, 12, 15, or 24 volts. Another useful bonus is that it can both step up and step down the input voltage. Third, this converter, despite its small size, has a very impressive load capacity and provides a maximum output current of up to 5 amps. But for long-term operation at high currents, additional cooling is required. In our case, the input voltage can vary from 5.5 to 8.4 volts, depending on the battery voltage, with a nominal value of 7.4 volts. With the converter's output voltage set to 12 volts, which is exactly how I have it, the maximum power reaches 40 to 50 watts. Assembly. You can always throw something together haphazardly, but we're going to try to make it look good. To start, I decided to design a circuit board where all the modules are installed by soldering. On the board, we have diodes for isolation, another small diode, a P-channel MOSFET transistor, and a couple of resistors. I made a small mistake in the layout of this board in one spot, but in the version from the archive, everything has been fixed. Let's take a look at a simplified schematic in the simulator. 12 volts of direct power flows through a single diode and into our connected load. In parallel, power from the source output goes through another diode to the battery. In reality, the power first goes to our battery charging system, then to the BMS, and only after that to the battery. Don't pay attention to this resistor. It's just simulating the charging system. The diode in series with the charger provides extra safety by preventing current from flowing back from the battery to the charging system. But, of course, there is still a small voltage drop across it, which can lead to a slight undercharge of the battery, but that will actually help extend its lifespan. Next, power from the battery goes to the source of the P-channel MOSFET, and from its drain, through another diode, it again goes to the load. In reality, a boost converter is connected between the drain of the MOSFET and the diode. Basically, when the power supply is working fine, power from our source goes to the output, powering the load, and at the same time charges the battery. Also, the positive from the power source goes through a small diode to the gate of the MOSFET, ensuring it stays firmly off. Remember, it's a P-channel MOSFET. After that, it's simple. The MOSFET is off, which means the converter is disabled. Moreover, the voltage divider and the switch are selected so that when the battery is discharged, the switch is fully open and has minimal resistance. If the power goes out, a turn-on voltage will be applied to the MOSFET through the lower resistor of the divider. It'll activate immediately, and the load will be powered by the battery. The switching process is pretty fast, but just in case, a couple of capacitors have been added. They provide compensation during switching. It could have been done without a MOSFET, powering the load directly from the converter, regardless of whether mains power is present. That would have made the design a bit simpler, but I figured this way is better. And there's no need to keep the converter on all the time. Now, about the diodes. On the actual board, each diode is made up of two powerful 5-amp shoddy diodes in parallel. You can use ready-made diode assemblies with a common cathode, which is what I did. Of course, sometimes the currents will be high, the diodes will heat up, and that's where the biggest losses occur. That's why at first I wanted to use so-called ideal diodes, but then I changed my mind, since I hadn't used them in similar designs before. It's unclear how they'll behave, though in theory they should work fine, but I decided not to take the risk. Ideal diodes are much more efficient, and nothing would heat up. Now, about the transistor. This particular one was chosen for a reason. You have to keep in mind that the minimum voltage on the battery when it's almost discharged is just over 5 volts. That's a tough mode, and the transistor can heat up under those conditions. The transistor used here has a low threshold voltage. So even if there are 4.5 volts at the gate, and the current through the channel is 20 amps, which in reality will be much lower, the power dissipated on it will be about 4 watts. This is a tiny transistor, and under such conditions it'll heat up, but the heat is efficiently dissipated through the leads to the large traces on the board. It's an SMD switch. I had to resort to a bit of a tech hack to mount it on the board, since the board was originally designed for switches in a TO220 package. I pulled this transistor out of a Chinese start-stop button electronic module. Next, we solder all the components onto the board and set it aside. The next step is assembling the battery. To keep everything on point, I printed out holders where the cells were installed. Then, I carefully connected all the batteries together by using spot welding with these thin nickel strips. With the electronics and battery assembled, all that's left is the case. Figured out what to make it from and how isn't really an issue when you have a 3D printer. I designed a case with the required dimensions, then printed it on the printer using ABS plastic. The case has slots for natural cooling. The power supply has its own separate compartment to minimize heat transfer from it to the rest of the electronics. There's a power switch that turns off the converter. This is necessary for safe storage and maintenance of the power source. The power source is ready, and it's time to start testing. The load will be electronic. The output voltage of the power source is about 12 volts. Let's not mess around and immediately set the current to 3 amps. For now, we're powering it from the mains, and the battery's fully charged. With this setup, our power source can supply loads with a power of about 50 to 60 watts. Next, we disconnect from the mains, and now the power source is running solely on the battery. It handles 35 to 40 watts at the output without any problems. We reconnect to the mains, and everything works perfectly. Now about the costs. Almost all the components were bought on AliExpress. Some things were just lying around unused in my stash. At the time of assembly, which was February 2026, the charging module, battery protection system, converter, and other small parts cost a total of $8 to $10. The batteries cost about $13. I got the power supply for free, but even if you have to buy everything, they're not expensive. Altogether, the total expenses come out to about $30 to $35, not counting the work for modeling, 3D printing, and labor costs. I think that's pretty reasonable, considering what this UPS can do. Yeah, I'm sure some of you use ready-made solutions that work just fine, hold a charge well, and can power pretty hefty loads. And some people will say that a regular household UPS or a simple 12-volt battery will do the same thing, and you can get them for free. I can't argue with that. But here, it's a custom-made device specifically for these kinds of loads, built by hand. Anyone who wants a factory-made one will just buy it anyway. My channel, though, is all about DIY projects. Sure, this time it's a DIY project made from ready-made modules, but the most important thing is that it was made with heart. Well, that's it for this video. You'll find links to all the necessary components, as well as the complete project archive, in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, you can always support the creator with a kind word or some constructive criticism in the comments. That's all for me. As always, this was Kasyanike with you. See you next time.
Bye.